hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Edyta Samborska. So for those who don't know me, I work as Kyndryl Cloud Uplift advocate. You might know us as SkyTap. However, we changed the name and now we are Kyndryl Cloud Uplift, which is, very good because this is new year, new name, new opportunities. So super happy about that. I'm really excited that I can welcome you here. And today we are going to talk about the IBMi Playbook, 5 reasons why cloud is the modern choice for DR. As mentioned, if you will have any questions, you can leave it on a chat. Our speakers will answer it during the webinar, but there will be also the Q&A session at the end. So if you will have any questions, we can cover it at the end of the session as well, so don't worry. And now I think it's a good time to introduce our speakers. So Richard Field is Business Operations Director from Kyndryl, and Ash Giddings, Product Manager at Maxava. So today there will be talking about 5 reasons why cloud is the modern choice for DR. So welcome, and let me give you the stage. So the microphone is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Edyta, and hello, everybody. Let me just open the presentation up, and we can get started. So, as Edyta said, what we want to talk about today is the why cloud is a modern choice for DR. These are concepts that have been around for a little while, but we just wanted to bring it together. It's great for Ash and I to get together and talk together about this particular topic. So, as I said, let's just have a quick intro. So my name is Richard Field, and I work for Kyndryl. I came to Kyndryl from SkyTap, which has now been renamed. I come from a power background too, and IBMi particularly. So I do understand this space, understand the challenges that businesses face in trying to solve for business continuity and so on. But I also understand the cloud market too, hopefully, so I can share some of that with you. So over to you, Ash.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So excited to be here today for today's webinar with Richard and Kyndryl. And I do apologize if I keep saying SkyTap and not Kyndryl Cloud Uplift. It's just a habit. But it's great to be here. A little bit like Richard, I've said it. We've been around the block a little bit. We've worked for ISVs, for cloud providers, for finance companies, logistics, MSPs. So we've got quite a broad appreciation for what goes on in the market, some of the challenges that are faced. And I don't know how, but myself and Richard have always managed to avoid working at the same company. Even though we work at slightly different companies, we always end up working together somehow. So I'm not sure if that's good or bad, Richard, but here we are today, and we're looking forward to sharing this with you. We've got quite a back catalogue of webinars. We've probably done, I don't know, maybe half a dozen of these.
Yeah.
Sometimes talking predominantly about cloud, sometimes about high availability and disaster recovery, and sometimes mixing the two. And I think when the two are paired, they definitely provide a solution for DR and IBMi better than the sum of its parts. So great to be here.
Thanks, Ash.
And I know Edyta we're going to do a poll question before we get started today. Get that in and out of the way so we can focus on the main content. So Edyta, I think you're ready pretty much to share that poll question.
Okay, I think you should see the poll right now in front of your screen.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. I was not sure because there was some error and the information that I need to create it from the scratch, but I'm super happy that it worked.
That's good. So really, we're kind of interested. As I say, we've done a few of these webinars, and we always try to gauge so we can adapt the content on the fly a little bit, kind of where you and your business are with regards to your cloud journey. When we first started doing these, there was a different set of results to what I kind of expect today, but maybe you're a 100% on-premise still. There are companies out there that are that. Many people start with dev, test, DR as their first cloud workload. Maybe you've gone all in and you're fully in the cloud, or maybe you've got some hybrid mix. So it will be great to gauge where you are with regards to your journey.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that has changed over time, Ash. I think, because it's clearly there's been a direction towards cloud, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether that has shifted either in what people are running in the cloud or how many people are running already in the cloud. That we could get some interesting results. So
yeah, definitely. I think when we first started doing these webinars, maybe 4 years ago, people used to say, why should I put a workload in the cloud? And now they're asking, is there a reason why I shouldn't put it there? I think that's the subtle change that I've seen.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's a sort of why not or when rather than if, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's probably fair.
Okay, well, I think in the chat there, Richard, we can see the responses, which is quite a mix there. So there's nearly 30% running, 100% still on premise. Other, we should have been more descriptive in the other, but yeah. There's nearly a quarter running completely in the cloud. Any surprises there at all?
I mean, not too much of a surprise, but that's definitely moved since we first started talking about this. So yeah, that definitely has increased. I'm kind of not too surprised, but yeah, that certainly is the trend that we're seeing. As you say, we probably should have picked up the other in a different way, but hey, that's interesting. But yeah, still we've seen the on-premises being the largest part, but cloud is close behind. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, well, thank you to everybody for completing that. That's really useful, and hopefully we can give you a little bit more of a story about how we see that changing over the coming months and years. So okay, let's get into this. Ash,
yeah, fantastic. Yeah, we're talking about DR today. We couldn't start talking about DR and cloud without talking about, or in some cases reminding people what RPO and RTO is. So recovery point objective, RPO, defines how much data loss is acceptable when a disruption occurs. It's an industry term, it's not an IBMi term. And in practical terms, it means the maximum amount of data that a business can afford to lose before operations and compliance are materially impacted. Whereas RTO, recovery time objective, defines how quickly systems and applications must be restored after an outage. So that represents the maximum tolerable downtime before business processes, revenue, customer trust, and probably less tangible things like business reputation before they start to become affected. So just a reminder there as to what that is. I think next slide, Richard, which you're talking about tape drives or the lack of them.
Exactly, yeah. And what those of us who have got a few grey hairs and as Ash put it, have been around the block a bit, will remember when tape drives were the only way that you would back things up. I'm not going to go back as far as diskettes because I probably will age myself, but traditionally people would use tapes to back up, and your recovery time was extended. Your recovery point was your last good backup. Now as we've seen, there's that trend towards cloud where there is no tape drives in the cloud, you have to do things in a different way because everything is virtualized. So certainly you have to think about backup in a different way. But I think there's probably a more important point, which is, you know, when tape drives were the standard for recovery, for business continuity, not many businesses ran sort of 24/7, 365 days of the year. There wasn't so much of a web presence, for example, that you needed to service. So I think that world has changed, and the requirement for that recovery point of kind of near zero and recovery time of perhaps a few minutes has become much more prevalent than it was a few years ago. So you have to kind of think of these things hand in hand of, you know, what does the business demand by way of business continuity, and how do you address that when you move towards the cloud? You know, not only how do you get there, but how do you protect your data when you are in there, and also, you know, what do you do to achieve that disaster recovery position, that business continuity position? So you know, things have changed, certainly. There's a lot more technology available, and you have to adopt that. But it is an interesting debate about exactly what you do.
But you have got VTLs available, yeah, Richard?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, VTL is probably the standard choice, certainly in IBMi. You know, there are tools within, and I apologise, I'm going to say SkyTap and Kyndryl Cloud Uplift, you know, kind of interchangeably, because SkyTap is shorter. But yes, within cloud, we have backup solutions where you can just flash copy the instance, but we also use VTLs so that customers can still use things like BRMS and the same backup programs they'd previously used, and nothing really has to change too much. It looks and feels just like it did on premise. So, you know, whether you're putting your production or your disaster recovery or both, nothing really has to change in terms of process. It's just the mechanism to get there is slightly different.
Okay. If we're talking about logical replication solutions such as Maxava HA and cloud, and where that comes into play with RPO and RTO, logical replication solutions don't care where the source is. They don't care where the target or targets are. They could be on premise, it could be in the cloud, they could be in different regions in the cloud, they could even be with different cloud providers, or a hybrid mix of the two or the three. It can be used synchronously or asynchronously, depending on the distance between the source and the target or targets. The answer's kind of yes. I've always found with logical replication, I've talked about it before. It's kind of what we call the Lindy effect with logical replication. As IBMi and the underlying architecture and the places and locations that we house and we manage these workloads changes over the years, some solutions kind of come and go. They're no longer valid. Logical replication, it always has a use case, whatever you're trying to do. I'm going to talk a little bit further in the presentation about migrations, about migrating data to the cloud. Again, it's another great use case for logical replication. But we can definitely help with RPO and RTO with regards to Maxava HA. Next slide, please, Richard.
Okay.
Yeah, non-disrupted DR testing. This is an interesting one. So logical replication solutions, most of them tend to have something called simulated role swap. It's called slightly different in some of the competitive solutions, but it's designed to take the risk and disruption out of HA testing. It allows organizations to safely rehearse a full role swap between production and backup system. Again, forget about where they are, without impacting users, applications, or even live data. By validating replication integrity, object readiness, operational procedures, there are some manual procedures in there in advance. Simulated role swap turns failover testing from what I call a very stressful incident, often the elephant in the room, an infrequent event, hopefully, into what should become a routine confidence building exercise. That result is a predictable RTO, verified RPO, and proof that the business can actually recovers when it matters and not just on tape. On paper. And simulated is the key word here. I've worked at numerous sites where DHAR had to be invoked for various reasons. I'm not just an unlucky person, but I've had to cope with fire, flood, power failure, hardware failure, bulldozers cutting through cables. It seems to follow me around. So wherever I'm working, make sure you're not working. But really, it's a question of when it's going to happen, not if it's going to happen. It will catch up with you at some stage. And on each occasion, mass panic has taken over. The pressure's really on. If you've conducted a simulated role swap previously, it's a tried and tested process. No mass panic, just a number of well-defined, well-rehearsed steps. In fact, in Maxava, you can take advantage of something we have called CSF, command scripting function. And that's designed to automate many of the manual steps that are normally associated with role stops. Again, taking some of the dangers or potential mishaps that can happen when humans are doing it or doing it manually, particularly in a pressure situation. So that's simulated role swap or virtual role swap for you. Next slide, please, Richard. And all of the time, simulated role swap is happening. Users continue working away on the production box, totally oblivious to the fact that you're doing the preparation, the legwork to make sure it's not an elephant in the room. Changes and transactions are still being replicated to the backup box. They're just not being applied. So it's actually worth its weight in gold. I did work, a small anecdote here, I did work at one managed service provider some time ago that used to conduct a role swap every weekend. They used to swap and stay every weekend. It was a little bit more complicated. I think they had 4 source box, and those 4 source box replicated to one in the middle called central. And they used to role swap one of the, if you like, the satellite boxes every weekend. It sounds overkill, but what it made sure is that every operation team, irrespective of what shift they're on, it does come around quite quickly. It became a tried and trusted process. It became something they weren't scared of. It was just, oh, it's that time of the day on a Sunday morning. It's role swap time. So it's really powerful. Next slide, please, Richard.
Thanks. So we also just want to talk a little bit about sort of jumping over to the other side of this is the cloud element to this. This is certainly something that we have seen over a period of time. You know, we've SkyTap has been around for quite a long time. We've been doing IBMi and powering cloud for a number of years, and certainly this is something which has accelerated, is this move from capital expenditure to a more OPEX model. And there's a couple of reasons and advantages to this. Partly there is the financial aspect, which is if you have to buy equipment every 3 years or 5 years, there's a capital expenditure. Somebody has to go to the IT from the IT department to the finance director. Please, sir, please, can I have some more? Please, can I have a big chunk of money? £1 million or dollars or whatever it might be. Big capital expenditure, and then the finance team have to find that money, find that capital, spend that, agree a lease or whatever it may be, and those are very, very lumpy costs. And traditionally that was always okay, because that was just the way that you did business. You bought equipment, you put it in a computer room in the corner of the office, and that's what you did. And then the world kind of changed. And that becomes financially, that becomes difficult to plan for. So that's kind of one aspect, and certainly the business wants to see more sort of smooth cash flow. So as I said, that's one aspect. The other part of this is there is a move from capex to opex, because an opex model is much more flexible, it's much more granular. businesses have changed from a very fixed growth strategy, very fixed consumption. They are much more flexible in their consumption, and therefore they need their infrastructure to be more flexible. And that infrastructure is more flexible when it's within a cloud environment, for example. So if you have a physical machine, it's constrained. It's like, you know, it's like living in a certain size house. You know, you can only have so many people in that house. Whereas if you live in a hotel, you can kind of book as many rooms as you want, and that's kind of the model. And of course, with a hotel, you pay for what you use when you use it, and when you've finished, you walk away, and it's somebody else's responsibility. And cloud is a bit like that. You know, it's a bit like renting a car rather than buying a car, or, you know, renting a hotel room rather than buying a hotel. So it's become the kind of modern way of delivering some of this infrastructure in a much more flexible world that is needed. It also has other advantages, and I've just kind of, you know, thrown a picture out here. Is, you know, this is the management interface into Skytap's cloud for a variety of IBM workloads. So, you know, that in itself has cost savings that come with it, because there's a single view of how you manage your entire infrastructure, and this includes not only the power systems, but and it's rather small, but we have, you know, we have Windows systems running in here, and Linux and IBMi and AIX, and this all manages the storage, and it manages networking, and so on. So rather than having multiple interfaces, lots of different teams who need to be involved, a much smaller team or one person can manage the whole thing, and it's all delivered in a very point and click modern way, without needing lots and lots of teams and people writing command line and all this kind of stuff. So that's certainly an advantage that we are seeing. And this, you know, this may be, as we said right at the beginning, a production workload or dev test workload, or it may be disaster recovery workload, and it doesn't really matter. You know, you can manage it in exactly the same way. But the advantage of obviously moving everything is you get a single interface into managing your systems. So Ash, do you want to just take this one, because this is sort of the development of that next topic, I suppose, isn't it, really, around that?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I guess it's a similar message to what you've just said, really. Although Maxava still have the capability of using and paying for Maxava in the traditional way, that of purchasing a license and then paying maintenance each year, much of the business is now centered around the subscription model, much like yourself, Richard, just really to align with the market. So the capability is there, whichever you choose. We tend to find that those looking at public cloud, such as Kyndryl, do tend to adopt the, if you like, the OpEx flexible model. And something else I should mention here, that if you're using Kyndryl for IBMi DR, Maxava only price on the IBM processor group of your source machine or your production server. So if you're running a processor group P05 and you're going to be replicating to Kyndryl to a P10, not Power 10, a processor group 10, so a P05 to a P010, you're only paying P05 pricing. So that's something that we're proud of, and we do that because customers have very little control as to where they end up with some of the cloud providers. So a known constant is their environment. So we tend to price on that, which goes down very well, actually. So we don't really care about the CPW or anything like that. We price on source P group pricing. Such a mouthful. Thank you, Richard.
And that's a subscription-based pricing model, Ash, isn't it? So you pay effectively for what you use when you use it. You don't have to buy a license. You just effectively kind of rent a license from Maxava for the HA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which ties in with the sort of cloud consumption type view.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. That's really good. It's good. Okay. So again, let me just sort of jump a little bit back to Kyndryl Cloud Uplift, and as I said, what was formerly known as Skytap, and talk a little bit about what that solution actually is, because Some of you may be familiar with, some of you may not, but I just wanted to kind of cover this off. So really to sort of set the scene, Kyndryl Cloud Uplift is an IBM Power hosting service in hyperscaler cloud. And hyperscaler, as we know, is the kind of the big three cloud providers, Microsoft Azure, etc., being one of them. So our service is in Azure. It's a self-service metered usage pay-as-you-go service to deliver IBMi and other platforms as well, as we've seen, but we're talking about IBMi here. So you can literally just go and self-service an IBMi instance for whatever purpose you want. You don't even have to tell us that you're doing it or what you're going to use it for. You can just choose how much you want to use, and how long you want to be there is entirely up to you. You can be there for 10 minutes, you can be there for 10 years. We really don't mind. You pay for what you use. So that in itself is very cloud-like. It's not traditionally how customers have consumed IBMi, where you've had to buy something and wait. And it sort of takes 3 weeks to get the box and another 2 weeks to set it up. We can have an IBMi instance working in about 15 or 20 minutes. But you also get a lot of the other benefits of a cloud service, however that's delivered, particularly the hyperscaler public cloud, where that consumption is very, very flexible and agile. You can change up and down, you can turn on and off. As I said, it's all pay as you go. So if you're using it, for example, for disaster recovery, then you have the ability to increase your consumption temporarily if you are doing a simulated role swap, a role swap test, or a real failover. It's flexible without having to sort of reserve the capacity to match your production machine. So actually there can be some cost savings to be accrued there if you're using this just for disaster recovery. And the same for things like dev tests, because you can shut them down and you stop paying. But particularly when we're talking about DR, if you were to choose to put disaster recovery into cloud, then you don't have to go and negotiate another data center contract and buy a server and stand that up. And every time you upgrade your production, you've got to upgrade your DR as well. And you've run out of rack space because you need, you know how it is. So that kind of agility, that kind of flexibility, and as we put it, the elasticity of cloud is really, really helpful in broad terms, but particularly when we're talking about DR as a service. It's also very, very granular, but it's also very scalable. So you can take a fraction of a shared machine, and by fraction I mean a 20th of a processor, for example. And that's at a time when the smallest IBM Power system that you can buy is 4 cores. And there's way, way more capacity than you're likely to need for disaster recovery. So if you wanted something really, really small, you can do that, either because it's just a dev machine or because it's DR. And as you said, it's not only for production and development, but test and HADR is a really, really good fit here. There's a point I've missed I'll come back to at the end. And what I'll also say is, not only do you get an IBMi instance, but you get all of the associated infrastructure around it, like storage, networking, and it's all virtualized and it's all delivered through the same interface. So setting yourself up with an environment in SkyTab is really, really easy. It takes minutes, and that includes connecting it, which is really, really powerful. So as I said, I've worked in data centers. I know how long it takes to rack a whole load of hardware because you need it for DR, and if you're trying to do that quickly, it just doesn't happen. And the last point I just want to touch on here is that perhaps less so in a DR scenario, but more in a production scenario, if you were to move your IBMi application into cloud, particularly hyperscaler-based cloud like Azure, you then have access to a whole load of other public cloud services and functions. So we're talking about AI, advanced DevOps, security, blob storage, for example, which is very, very low cost, high capacity storage that you can leverage to develop your business. And also, if you are moving other workloads into Azure, then suddenly your IBMi is close by to that, and we're connected because it's all in the Azure data center. So hopefully that gives you a little picture of Kyndryl Cloud Uplift or SkyTap Cloud and the benefits that it brings in more general terms, particularly with a focus around DR. And I'll just cover briefly where we are, and then if we have time, then I will just show you the SkyTap Cloud itself, actually, as a sort of a semi-live demo. So I don't know where everybody is on this call, but we are spread well across the world. We have something like 15 or 17 regions around the world. We're opening them up, new ones all the time, as you can see from the map where they all are. So we have 4 in Europe, 4 in the Americas, and then we have 5 in Asia, covering India, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, we've just opened, and Sydney, and there are more to follow. So there is a second Australia region, second Japan region, and as you can see, we've got 2 in 2 in Canada. So this is growing all the time, and all of these regions are Microsoft Azure data centers. So we are close to those public cloud services that we've talked about. So let me just bear with me while I just switch screens, and I will just jump over to the Kyndryl Cloud Uplift interface, and hopefully I can show you a little of that. And you can sort of get some idea about how easy it is to do some simple things. I won't take very long on this in the interest of time, but let me just show you a little bit of the actual interface here. So this is the cloud portal that we use to administer all environments within SkyTap. And when we talk about an environment is effectively a virtual data center. So in that virtual data center, you have, of course, virtual machines or logical partitions. Those 2 terms are interchangeable. We have networking, we have storage, we have users, we have connectivity, and so on. And you can see what you've used here. We have training material available through our portal, which you can just jump in and out of it whenever you want for free. And then, I have a number of environments here. So typically what you might see would be an environment which is production here in one region. So this one's in Singapore, but it doesn't actually matter. My demo environment is in Amsterdam, but this could be production in Amsterdam and DR in Dublin or London, or it doesn't really matter, wherever you want to be connected with Maxava, as we've talked about. If I go into our demo environment here, then you start to see the virtual machines that I have within my environment. Now this is just a test bed and a demo, so it doesn't really mean anything particularly, but what you can see is we have a mix of Power 9 and Power 10. This is 7.4 running on Power 9, this is 7.6 running on Power 10. I've got AIX over here on Power 10. I've got Windows on x86 in here, which I can use as a jump-off server or a staging post, or whatever you want to do. And as we said, I just wanted to prove to you how quickly it is to create a virtual machine. I will just go and grab a template for a virtual machine and put that into my demo environment. Because it's very easy to say, oh, it's really, really quick, and then somebody going away thinking, yeah, but you've got to go and write some great API script, and oh, look, it's here. There we go. And I can change the name of that and start it up, and that'll probably take about 10 minutes, but I won't start it now, but you get the idea. And then, because I expect we've probably got some IBMi techies on this call, we can access these virtual machines simply by, and we can get straight into the console just by clicking onto the screen here, and then you get straight into a green screen. Now at this point, what generally happens is you get this kind of sigh from the techies who will go, we're all happy now, we've seen a green screen for an IBM OS400, we're all happy, my day is complete. And then once you're in, it's just an IBMi. It's IBMi OS, it's running on Power. There's nothing else to really say. It's just, there we go, that's running on a Power 9 S922. There's nothing else to see. all your application completely unchanged. There's no refactoring, recompiling. It's exactly as it was, but it's just running on virtualized infrastructure. But the difference being that I can make very quick changes to my infrastructure here if I wish. I can change my my allocation of resources. I can add more disk, etc., as I want, all from the same interface. I can change settings of the virtual machines. I can change what hardware it runs on. So I could do a migration from Power 9 to Power 10 simply by powering it off, changing a setting in here, and then restarting it again, and it will come back on new hardware. Now, you tell me anybody who can do a Power 9 to Power 10 upgrade simply by using a mouse and 3 clicks. You know, that is the power of cloud. And what I can also do, because I said when I was talking about disaster recovery, there's a few things we can do here. We can, let me just jump into one that we've got running here already, and I'll see if this has got the, that's running. That is running, and I can change the resources within a certain set of parameters while that virtual machine is running, and that's live. So as you can see at this point, it's only got 20th of a processor and 8 gigabytes of memory. It's just a tiddly little machine. But in the instance that this was a DR target that Maxava is replicating to, I could actually run this with the minimum amount of memory, and you can set what these upper and lower limits are. It's entirely up to you. I can run it at a very low limit, and then I'm going to do a roll swap or a simulated roll swap or a failover, as we talked about, and I can simply just change it here, and then click save, and it'll change it instantly. And if I wanted to change it beyond that range, then I would just power it down and restart it. So again, really, really easy, very simple to do, some very, very simple things. There's lots more that I could show you on this if you were interested, but in the interest of time, I just wanted to show you the very, very basics. I would say networking is just as easy to do as well. So I won't go into that at the moment, but just to give you a little bit of a taster, hopefully it whets your appetite and you come back and say, please show us more at another point. But let me just jump back to the presentation, and we
That was
can
really
continue
powerful,
from there.
Richard. As you say, we always say it's easy, but actually seeing how easy it is, I think it's definitely worth it. It is ridiculously straightforward, particularly the network side of things. I've always kind of disappeared when somebody talks about networks, but even I can do the networking side of things. So if you want to do a proof of concept or something, speak to myself or Richard, and we can work together and do a proof of concept with Maxava and Kyndryl, and just prove that you can replicate, you know, a small subset of data from one partition to another. Really, really straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, thanks, Ash. So, okay, let's jump on. Back to you, Ash. People have heard enough of me speaking. I'll throw it back to you.
Now, I've mentioned once or twice that logical replication doesn't really care where the source and target or targets are. In fact, we're currently working with some businesses in the Caribbean who, for some reasons, probably around governance, are looking to replicate data out of the region and into Ireland. It really doesn't matter to us. So I'm often asked whether Maxava can support a particular setup. And even without checking, I can normally say yes. Most setups are one-to-one. The image on the left there, that's, I guess, I call that the traditional setup. You've got a single source, you've got a single target, don't matter where they are. Increasingly popular is the middle image, the second image here. So that's where you have a single source machine, and it's replicating to more than one target. Often it's 2 targets, like the second image, but really there's no kind of logical limit. I think it's 255, but really there's no logical limit. And this has become popular as businesses look to develop I'm not sure if this translates, a belt and braces approach with targets in different locations, often with different cloud providers, normally incorporating the cloud. And this is done in an attempt to ensure that not everything is in a single geographic region or with the same provider. So that's one to many. You can also have many to one, so you can have multiple servers replicating to a single central one, like the example I gave earlier. And then on the right hand side there, you can use Cascade or daisy chain, I think it used to be called as well, where you have a source machine replicating to a target, and then that target replicates to a further downstream target, and so on. And again, there's no real logical limit there. It starts to get messy probably from a management point of view, but as I say, it really doesn't matter to us. All we require, and all logical replication requires, is a small number of ports to be open between servers. Or should I say IBM functions, only require I think it's the DDM and the remote journal related ports, which are 446, 447, 448, and 377, I think. And then data can flow quite happily. Richard, next slide.
Okay. Okay, back to me. I've had a breath and a sip of coffee. I'm good to go again. So we talked a little about the proximity to cloud services, and I think this is kind of relevant here, particularly when you're looking at the production workload. So I just wanted to sort of include a little bit of a schematic almost of how we work with Azure and how we connect on premise, because this is the mechanism by which probably the replication traffic is going to come in. But I did just want to pick up on something that you said there, Ash, about the one-to-many replication, or even the cascade replication, because what we're seeing in the market now is that customers are not only looking for disaster recovery who didn't previously have it, but there are still a few out there, but also customers are looking for an additional DR target because of regulations that they're being forced into. So they may have one system on premise and a second in another remote data center, and now they need another one which is with a completely different provider. So that kind of one-to-many or cascade suddenly becomes very relevant, and cloud can either be the first target or the second target, or both if you wish. So again, that's becoming more and more relevant. And the point here is that not only do we bring IBMi into the hyperscaler and public cloud and all the benefits that I talked about previously, but we also bring it very, very close to not only the native tooling which is available within those hyperscalers like Azure, so things like security tools, SIEMs and SOCs and AI tools and all that we've talked about, but because that connectivity is very, very straightforward, it's easy to get there, it's easy to get your data there, and it's easy to connect it. So you can use a lot of the cloud networking capability to bring your IBMi as a target for DR. It becomes a lot more straightforward. We haven't got to go and set up some very, very complicated lease lines and so on, as you might have done in days of yore. So we have this express route comms, what some clouds call direct connect, but we have express route comms, or just an internet connection will suffice in most cases, either between the native Azure and SkyTab or directly into SkyTab. And then there's just a sort of another picture of the same, really, just that shows how it's kind of laid out as that connectivity, and how you get back to things like AI tools and blob storage in Azure, which you can use as a staging post for migration and so on. Because I know you're going to talk a little about migration in a moment, Ash, too. So hopefully that makes a lot more sense. But everything else is then becomes self-contained within SkyTab. So so hopefully that sort of gives you a little bit of a picture of the architecture. I mean, hand it back to you for the other piece of that, Ash.
Yeah, something I probably should have mentioned is on the diagram where we had the cascade and one-to-many, is we are also seeing some interest now, and this is what happens. People running production in the cloud and replicating to on-premise. There are many use cases for all of these, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's whatever your business needs and whatever regulations you have to adhere to. As I say, the answer is normally yes, so please come and talk to us. I guess just a little bit of modernization. We have a very modern look and feel to it with our browser interface here. Fully functioning browser interface. You can do everything from setup to day-to-day monitoring and running audits and checking audits, all from within here. We also have a GUI. In fact, we had a GUI before we had a green screen. The GUI is a little bit more heavyweight. The browser's a lot more lightweight. And for those that are wanting to still use the green screen 5250, that interface is still there and is still maintained. Next slide, please, Mr. Field.
Thank you.
But some people say, okay, I'm not interested in DR. I want to move proper or live workloads into the cloud. How do I do that? How do I get data into the cloud? And this is really where Migrate Live comes in. So Migrate Live is it's like a self-contained offering. So Maxava HA would be installed on your current server. It would also be installed on your target. Let's assume it's in SkyTap. It's built on remote journaling, so changes would start to be collected. And then depending on the size of your environment, we'd work with you on seeding the target where you want to go to in the cloud. That could be RMS, it could be an image, it could be any form of backup. It really doesn't matter. Manual sync points would then be set within Maxava, so that Maxava can start replicating from that manual sync point. We then enter a replication phase where Maxava will get in sync and of course remain in sync. We then come into the simulated role swap phase, which we can do. We normally do 2 of these, but again, it's unlimited. 2 is normally sufficient. And this enables you to conduct application, network, data integrity checking, anything else that you need to tick. Anything to ensure that you get no surprises when you actually roll over to fully in the cloud. And all the time the simulator roll swaps are being done, we're still collecting changes in the background. And eventually, you'll be at a place where we can coordinate the go live with all teams, agree on the time, final cutover checks, create the applications and allow the final data to replicate, and then start applications on the new target, and then finally power off the old server. Typically, a Migrate Live, we've got it kind of self-contained for 90 days. This encompasses software combined with expert services, and it's really designed to get your workload migrated. If you need to bolt on additional months to those initial 90 days, that's no problem at all. The type of problems that people normally get are around third-party licensing, to be honest. Third-party licensing and maybe some odd network challenges, but it's a self-contained package that you can keep bolting onto if you need to. Next slide, please, Richard. We've got a customer story here. So this is a great example of using the cloud really for disaster recovery. So Chiliwich, which is a household durable company, had a relatively small environment, but a fair few transactions each day. And these guys actually used to stop production to do backups. They didn't have any real DR other than old school tapes. They did use LTOs, so they weren't completely old school, but they were really exposed, really. So we worked with them to use the cloud as a DR target. And if we look at their environment, in the solutions section at the bottom there, they run a very slim DR box. So if you compare the source machine compared to the cloud target, it's very, very small. And that size is just really enough for Maxava to be able to replicate their transactions, for those transactions to be replayed in the cloud. Should they need to invoke DR, as Richard showed you, you can turn up the volume and you can run a roll swap to SkyTap no problem at all. Flex up and flex down when needed. Thanks, Richard.
Cool. No, it's good real life example, Ash, and yeah, it sort of shows the power of the cloud for DR, because that's tricky and expensive to do on premise, where you've got to sort of buy a server. Yeah, that's really good. It's always good to have a real life scenario, and we've got sort of plenty of those of customers who are doing that kind of flexibility and doing all sorts of clever stuff with that agility. So no, that's superb. So thank you for that. So we're sort of coming towards the last few minutes of this discussion, and it's been a really good one. I appreciate your input into this, Ash. It's been really helpful. But we wanted to leave a little bit of time for any questions that might come up. So Adita, do you want to just pick up any questions if anybody's posted anything in chat, or anybody wants to jump in?
Yeah, of course. So now it's a good time to use those few minutes for questions. So if you have any, please leave it on a chat and I will read it out loud so our speakers will be able to answer it. And of course, we have some questions. So let me tell you the first one. So how is the latency impacted when moving to the cloud?
Okay, Ash, shall I take that one?
Yeah, you can have that one, Richard.
Oh, thanks. Well, I mean, it's one of those typical IBM kind of answers. Is sort of it depends. I mean, what I would say is there's very, very few people these days who actually have a local computer room that's kind of attached to their building. Most people are into a remote DC of some sort. And if you remember the picture that we had of all of the locations, okay, we're not in every country. There's going to be some degree of latency, but we are well spread out across the globe, and we have collections of data centers, for example, in Europe, where we've got Amsterdam and Dublin and London and so on. So you've got some choice about where that needs to be. So you can sort of pick your location to reduce that latency. But what I also would say is communications has come on massively and continues to grow. So not only is there internet connectivity, but there is low latency, high bandwidth connections into cloud. If you already have a presence in Azure, you're already making use of those kind of connections into cloud. The latency between native Azure and SkyTop on Azure is negligible because we're in the same building. So it's literally just piggybacking on a cross connect in a data center. That's really, really easy. You have to plan it, you have to think about it, but it's a problem that many people have already solved in getting something into the cloud already, or getting to a remote data center. So it's not really a new issue, and it's not a problem. We have customers who are using remote data centers in another country, and in 99 times out of 100 it's never an issue. It's only really when you've got somebody like, say, a customer in South Africa was trying to use London, and moving 30 terabytes of data over a weekend becomes a slight challenge. But apart from that, you don't really see too much of an issue with that. But good question, thanks for that. Adita, anything else?
Yeah, of course, we have one more. I know you said that you can add CPU and memory on the fly, which is fine, but you also said you can add a disk on the fly. I take it that we would still have to perform the adding to SAP1, for example, and also run the ASP ball job.
Yeah, I mean, again, a good question. So you can change resources dynamically, like processor and memory. To add disks, you would typically need to power the virtual machine down to add disks. You do it all through the same interface, and again, it's all just point and click. But yes, you would then have to do the configuration work within the IBMi service tools to configure that disk for your application. That's fairly standard. We kind of do the bit that's time consuming, which is physically putting disks into trays and connecting it, we do for you, and then the rest is relatively straightforward. So again, what you have to remember is we're still running IBMi. You still have to do some of the same configuration steps for things like disk. But on another topic, when we're talking about networking, when Ash was saying how easy the networking is, we do all the networking setup for you. Again, there are some things you have to power the machine down for, like changing an IP address, but you don't have to do any configuration on the IBMi. So we try and aim to do lots of stuff for you to make it really, really easy. And adding disk is very, very straightforward because it is just point and click. So again, another good question that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Richard. And when engaging customers, is the discussions ring-fenced around IBM IDR, or are we finding opportunities beyond this into other areas? In example, stepping stone for production to SkyTab and x86 migration to Azure, AI, etc., learn and expand.
Yeah, I would say very much that we are not concentrating the broad effort around just DR as a service. We see that obviously that was the topic for today particularly, but the reason why that is a very interesting use case is because it's something which is a toe in the water for customers to understand better about the capabilities of cloud. But we're not limited to that. We have many production customers, we have dev test customers, we have customers using pipelines in Azure to deploy SkyTab VMs, all sorts of things. So this is very much production ready. We have customers running production on-premise DR in the cloud. As Ash said, we've got customers running production in cloud and DR on-premise. It's kind of anything goes because it's just infrastructure as a service. But it is very much a stepping stone towards modernization. And the first step being you modernize the way that you deliver infrastructure in a much more agile way, and that then becomes the blueprint, if you like, towards modernizing other functions of the application, whether that be AI or advanced DevOps or whatever else we've talked about. So again, another good question. Ash, you're getting off quite lightly here.
Yeah, I am. I was just going to add to that actually. I think with cloud, because you can run anything in the cloud, people go, oh, that's great, but you have to give them use cases. You have to talk about dev, you have to talk about test, and then at later date prod. But DR is definitely a great entry point, getting your toes wet, as is dev and test. You're looking for kind of a no risk or a low risk type thing to get you started. And that's really where we tend to start, or we tend to advise people to start. But if you're brave, you can put the production straight in.
Yeah, that's probably fair. So no, that's cool. We've probably got 1 minute for one more question, Aditya, if we've got
So a quick one. Does the available VTL solution allow DIPL capability yet?
Yes, you can. You can do a recover from scratch. It probably would need a broader conversation. So whoever's posted that question, if you want to get in touch with me, I can probably cover that in more detail because we're probably going to run out of time. But yes, you can do a full recovery. But what I would say is there are some other ways that you can do that within the SkyTab tooling in combination with a VTL that's probably more powerful. But again, really good question. I know it's something that comes up quite a lot, but yeah, a really good point. And there's lots of clever stuff that you can do with this to do things like template copies in combination with VTL, flash copy, so you can back up from a backup instance and stuff. But really good. Try and find me and connect, and we can talk about that in more detail. But I know we're kind of out of time. Lovely questions, really good. Ash, thank you very much for answering some of those and for your contribution today. Aditya, back to you, if you don't mind, just to let people know where they can find out more.
Yes, thank you so much, Richard, and Ash, thank you so much as well. I already left a few links on the chat, so hope you can see it. So there is a website to our Kyndryl Cloud Uplift and Maxava, additional materials. So if you would like to get to know us a little bit better, feel free to go there and check it. There is also a LinkedIn post already available, which is also on the chat. So you can go there and you can connect with us if you have any questions. If you would like to stay in touch, I also would like to encourage you to send us the invitation and invite us to your network. And also tomorrow on my YouTube channel, there will be a summary of this webinar. So I hope we'll stay in touch. Other than that, I would like to thank you so much for joining this webinar. So I'm really, really happy that we could spend some time together. And I hope that we can stay in touch and I will see you again during our next webinar. So thank you so much once again and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.